After this, we are joined by Nitin Gokhale. We will be discussing with him the Army's counter-offensive. We're also joined from the newsroom by Arun, our correspondent, who's been tracking the story very closely. Arun, has an unequivocal message today gone out from the side of the Indian Army that it has zero tolerance towards terrorism, and that is not only reflected in its intent and its statements, but also in action.
That's right, Munmun. It's a muscular response to the militants who attacked on the 4th of June this month. It's a strong message to the entire terrorist community that India will never bow down to the terrorism. It's a strong message that combating terrorism are concerned. Now, we all know that on 4th of June this month, the militants attacked the Chandel area in Manipur, and almost 18 soldiers were martyred and more than almost 15 soldiers were injured in this entire incident. Now, the army, what we're learning from our sources, that army was already getting inputs from the intelligence that these kind of attacks can again take place, and basically this time the target area were not only the soldiers or the part. So the army divided themselves into two parts and attacked or countered them in two parts, that is in the Nagaland border and at the Manipur border. And what we're learning from our sources that more than 15 militants have been neutralized by the army as of now. So it's basically a strong message from the Indian army that India will never bow down as far as this terrorism is concerned. And between the 20 Assam Rifle and the 6th Dogra Regiment, which kind of attack. Now, army attacked in that area and basically neutralized almost more than 15 militants, what we're learning as of now. Munmun?
Okay, all right. Thank you, Arun, for giving us that update from the newsroom. Nitin, our correspondent was pointing out how it was a well-planned attack. The Army ADGMO did say today that this was based on intelligence inputs. What is the significance of this counter-offensive?
The first point I want to make here is that this sends a message to all India's adversaries and even terrorists or militants or insurgents that if you harm India, then there is a cost to be paid. We will impose cost no matter where you stay, and therefore this operation has a great significance because the Indian Army has planned this operation along with intelligence inputs and all support from the Indian Air Force, and has gone across into Myanmar. We are told about 3 to 4 kilometers inside Myanmar where these camps existed, and have struck. And the latest inputs that were coming in that more than 50 insurgents have been killed.
All right.
So that is significant. The point number one. Point number two is this requires a political decision. The army takes the plan to the highest political authority, that's the Prime Minister, the National Security Advisor, and also of course the Defence Minister. All of them needed to give this very clear message to the army that go ahead and do this operation, because there's a great risk involved here. What if something went wrong? What if
this could not have happened without a clear political direction?
Absolutely, okay. Without a political direction. And the third point I want to make is that Myanmar was also kept in the loop. Myanmar army or security forces do not have too much presence in the areas that we are talking about, which is bordering Manipur and Nagaland, and therefore they would have, and there is a great cooperation, ground level cooperation between the Indian army and the Myanmarese army. They have been kept in loop, and this operation was carried out. So precise intelligence based operation where the Indian forces have done the retribution, if I may say. This is not revenge, but this is retribution. And therefore the government must be commended, the Indian security forces must be commended, Indian intelligence agencies must be commended for carrying out a very well coordinated operation which sends out a very strong message to India's adversaries.
Okay, is this the first time that a joint operation of this sort has happened with Myanmar, where the Indian army was allowed to get into the Myanmarese territory and attack militants there?
Well, not the first time. I mean, if you have long memories, I mean, I've been in that area for a long time. And I remember in 1995, exactly 20 years ago, in April and May of 1995, there was a big operation called Operation Golden Bird, where 120 odd insurgents were caught, 40 of them were killed, and huge cache of arms was recovered because it was being transported from Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, and it was coming to insurgent groups in northeast. So that was a very well coordinated operation that time, 20 years ago. But even otherwise, Indian army and the Myanmarese army have a very good understanding and very good cooperation on the ground. They keep talking to each other. Their officers come to India for a lot of training. Our officers keep visiting, and there's a lot of intelligence sharing that happens. So therefore, this was expected. This was being planned for the last 48 hours, from what I understand. And therefore, I am saying it again that a good political decision, bold political decision, and a bolder operation across the border, going and hitting the camps where these militants were taking shelter and were feeling safe. Now this message will go across to all India's adversaries, as I said, and all the terrorists and the insurgents, that they are not safe wherever they are. That's the important message.
Do you see a new doctrine emerging as far as this government is concerned and its approach on terrorism is concerned, especially when it comes to militancy in the northeast? Because there was a time where there was a lull. Before this attack happened, this was said to be the worst attack in the northeast in over a decade. And there was a lull for quite some time. Then there were ceasefire agreements that have been entered into, though NSC and K had abrogated that ceasefire agreement earlier. Do you see a clear doctrine emerging out of this?
Well, let's not call it doctrine. I mean, I would say the doctrine is very much there, that you can go and attack insurgent camps, you can neutralize insurgents. What has changed, if you ask me, in these past few months or 1 year or so, is that a clear directive to the security forces that once the clearance is given, go and strike. The doctrine is very much there. The sub-conventional doctrine of the Indian Army very much says that they can neutralize. But you're right, as far as the Northeast is concerned, for the past nearly 17 years now, or 18 years, the NSCN groups were in ceasefire mode with the Indian government, and therefore there was a feeling that the Northeast is under control and things have quietened down. Certainly they have quietened down, but these strikes can always happen, like the attack on the Indian Army convoy which happened on 4th of June can happen. But let's not jump to conclusions that the same template can be applied elsewhere on other borders. I'm talking about the Indian Army's counter-attack or the counter-offensive that they have launched.
But we've had similar joint counter-insurgency operations with the Bhutanese authorities in the past, also with Bangladeshi authorities.
That's right.
And this did come up, in the public address of Prime Minister also in Bangladesh when he was there on the two-day visit. So now are we seeing the government proactively pursuing its zero tolerance approach on terrorism?
Of course, there is zero tolerance to terrorism. And secondly, I think like it happened with Bhutan in 2004 and Bangladesh in 2010 and 11, when it handed over a lot of insurgents, and the operation in Bhutan was called Operation All Clear, where the Bhutanese army and the Indian army went and attacked the Ulfa camps or the Bodo camps that time. So that precedence is there. Let's not belittle all those efforts either. But what is clear is that now the army and the security forces have got clear directions that take minimum losses, inflict maximum casualties. And therefore zero tolerance comes in, and also taking the neighbors along. I mean, Bangladesh has really played up very well. Sheikh Hasina has delivered on the terrorism front. Bhutan has done that in 2004, and now hopefully even Myanmar, which, as I said, has its own limitations because of the lack of forces in that area, and also some reluctance.
Heavily forested area as well. Topography is difficult.
Quite a distance from the main centers of power in Myanmar, and they have their own problems. They have problems on the northern border with China, and where the rebels are fighting the Myanmarese army.
Which is why this coordination is all the more important.
Extremely important, and therefore I must say this, that this is a template which is can be emulated, but it has to be tweaked on every border according to the situation that exists.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nitin Gokhale, for joining us and for speaking to us on this very, very important subject on Newsnight tonight.